it is important to understand what's going on in the minds of those that we are with. And if you didn't hear the audio, in Britain, if you leave something on your plate, it's not a good thing, so you finish it off. But in Asia, you always leave something on the plate. Otherwise, you question the generosity of your host. And so they'll bring you more until you leave something left over. So in practical terms, you always leave something in a plate because you're satisfied, you've had enough. That's the importance of local knowledge. In this session, there's 4 things we want to frame and discover. We want you to get an insight into your own cultural values and how they compare to people of other nations. We want to identify things where misunderstandings happen. We want you to learn practical ways to improve your cultural intelligence. And we want you to gain insights into moving your own life or your congregation more in the area of being open to a multicultural setting. So here's some of the basics, okay? And I'm not seeing any PowerPoint on mine. It's cutting in and out, Zach. By the way, you can find that video. Just go to YouTube, put in HSBC cultural commercials or culture commercials, and they have several of them there.
Are you seeing my screen share at all?
I'm seeing your screen. I'm seeing the big screen right now, but I'm not seeing the
Okay,
PowerPoint.
so like when I hit play, you don't see the full slide on the screen like we did earlier.
Anything.
No, it's black.
Right, because we tried this earlier and it was working.
Yeah, there, it flashed on and went off.
Because like literally all I'm doing is hitting play and it's putting the screen full.
Okay.
So you're not seeing anything?
Nope. Well, we're not going to waste time with it. Friends, I would be happy to share the PowerPoint with you. And it has a lot of things on it that I think would be good to remember. But let's go ahead and go on. Here's some culture basics. Let's just start with that. Our culture is one of many, and none is superior. All cultures have beauty. And at the same time, as Lingenfelter says, all cultures have what he calls prisons of disobedience. In other words, we're all fallen. Every culture. American culture is not necessarily better than any other. There are certain things I love about American culture, but there's also things that I love about Filipino culture from spending so much time there. So the Bible was written to speak to all people, all cultures, guilt as well as shame cultures. We are called to reach the new Samaria, and that's a term that I recently picked up in the last 6 months. It's the fact that the world is coming into our communities, and they come from different religious backgrounds. They come from different cultural experiences. They are the new Samaria, and they are reachable. And as I was going through some Bible study recently, it's interesting how many times in the Bible the Lord asks us to care about the. And so from a pastoral, from a biblical standpoint, we need to care about those that are the new ones in our community. Let me define cultural intelligence real quick. This is from a book by Livermore. He says, cultural intelligence measures the ability to move seamlessly in and out of a variety of cultural settings. Now, I got to admit, I don't have that ability yet to move seamlessly. I'm okay in a number of cultures, but it's a goal that we're working toward. And with the growth of a multicultural America, we're going to need more and more the ability to move in and out of cultural settings and not feel uncomfortable. Hopefully, this session will help us to learn how. Okay, I wanted Joel to tell you a brief story about one of his first connections as he was working with people from another country and culture. So, Joel, welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Joel Labertew, the lead pastor in Normal, Illinois. And I grew up in central Iowa, small farming town, 10,000 people. My idea of diversity was the one Korean family in our community. I had one Korean friend who was on the wrestling team. And that was the full extent of my multicultural experience. Then I went to Bible college in Missouri, again, Midwestern, almost exclusively white. And the first assignment God gave me in ministry was in Chicago, at Belmont Assembly of God, a wonderfully beautiful, diverse church with Italians, Filipinos, Eastern Europeans, Latinos, African Americans. And I found myself as a minority. And as a 24-year-old young youth pastor, I remember a pivotal moment in the lobby at Belmont. I think it was a Sunday morning, and I'm getting, and this may sound arrogant, but it's true. I was getting an A+ in pastoral ministry for a white American farmer. Man, I was cranking out the task list. My lead pastor, Paul Martin, thought I was like a machine. I was getting work done. My farmer dad would have been proud. I can get a lot done in a hurry, but I remember I was walking quickly through the lobby when a Filipino elder, Brother Ling, I'm sure he's now with Jesus because 25 years ago he was really old, Bill. I bet he was in his 60s. He was so old, right? So here's this 24-year-old kid, man, I'm going 100 miles an hour through the lobby, and he stops me. Brother Ling, Filipino, 60-something, one of the few people I've pastored shorter than me. And he says, Pastor Joel, why are you, and here's the words he used, why are you so angry? And that really threw me back on my heels, because I wasn't angry. I wasn't an angry person. In fact, I was a happy person working hard at getting things done. And I was getting an A+ in ministry in my mind, but I was getting an F to him. And at 24, Bill and everybody, I didn't realize what was really happening. To me, it was an incident that I needed to learn to slow down and pay attention to people. But here I am 25 years later in ministry, now pastor in a very diverse church with a lot of Eastern cultures. That was a cultural confrontation that taught me, just because I was successful in a farmer mindset, I was failing at a Filipino mindset where the task could wait because the community mattered more than the accomplishment. And I can say over the last 25, almost 30 years, my life has been so deeply enriched by my Filipino, Indian, all kinds of Hispanic cultures, African American culture. My life has been enriched by seeing life through a different prism.
Culture is something that is a unique word. Let's define it in very, very simple terms. It just means this: culture is society's blueprint for succeeding in life. Okay. And to succeed in life in the Philippines, the culture is completely different than to succeed in life in a Midwestern farm community in Iowa, where work is valued, task is important. In the Philippines, relationship is valued, and the person that is out marching by himself in the field is looked at with sadness. You're living such a sad life because there's nobody around you. Culture is the ability to succeed in life, society's blueprint. So upping the cultural IQ is then accepting that there are other ways of doing things and opening ourselves to what does that look like in that person's mind. Now, if you took the simple survey, you learned that there's grids of time versus event, task versus people, dichotomistic thought versus holistic, crisis, non-crisis, status, achievement, vulnerability, concealment. And in most, not all, but in most people who have grown up in the West, they value time over event. They value task more than people. And we don't really want to say that, but yet in action, it's the way it is. We're more black and white than holistic or gray. We don't like gray areas. We're more crisis oriented than non-crisis. we're more achievement focused, then you're born into a certain place in society because of your family or status. And generally speaking, we're more vulnerable to share our own weaknesses as opposed to concealing them because we don't want to lose face. So I'm going to take a moment, and I'd like for several of you to just open your mic and say one thing. What was one thing you learned about yourself as you took that survey? Just one thing. Go ahead and open the mic and give us a sentence. I'll let 2 or 3 do that, and we'll move on.
Well, I learned that
Thank you, Brian.
I figured someone had
For
to go
being
first.
vulnerable.
Yeah. I actually was surprised in that area. I was leaning more vulnerable than concealability, a lot more than that. But I always thought myself as more of a people person, and I lean more still people, but it's still kind of like in there like task oriented, so it's not leaning heavily one way. That was kind of surprising to me.
Okay. All right. Someone else. Something that you kind of thought, oh, wow, I didn't realize, or
I realized that I was very focused, or lack of focus, on my time orientation and my event orientation. I was very low on that scale. Found out that I was actually higher on my status focus and my achievement focus.
okay. And none of these are like grades where, oh, I got an A in this and a C in that. Okay. This is just an understanding of where we're coming to the table with our own particular leanings. When you work with people that are from non-Western cultures, they are more event-oriented than time-oriented. It doesn't matter when something starts. I remember the first time I went to a Christmas party. We had just recently arrived in the Philippines, and me being an American who is time-oriented, I want to show up on time to honor the guest, that I value this. So I knock on the door of this Filipino family, and I am on time. And they open the door and look at me, and there is shock on their face because they weren't even ready for anybody to show up. They weren't ready at all. They hadn't set everything up yet. So they welcomed Kim and I in. They were gracious, but troubled. And we sat there for about 45 minutes before the door bell rang again. The party finally began 90 minutes later. And I learned a really important cultural lesson at that point. Many times I did weddings in the Philippines, and the wedding was supposed to begin at 7. The bride wasn't there at 7. The groom didn't arrive till 7:30. The music didn't start until 8 o'clock. And everybody was fine with it, except on the inside, me. Oh, time versus event. People from other cultures will be late. Don't get upset about that, okay? They value the place more than being on time. People from other cultures are often more people-oriented than task-oriented. Joel's illustration is a perfect one of that. Why are you angry? Because he was more concerned about the relationship than he was about the fact of something getting done. People from other cultures who come to our land are more holistic thinking. They give more attention to people and the context of a problem. It is seldom black and white. Honestly speaking, those who struggled the most in coming overseas in missions were very black and white in their thinking. They thought, this is the way it's got to be, this is right, and this is wrong. And I'm sorry, in many of the cultures of the world, there's 64 states of gray. And there's something that's more right than more wrong, or that's probably more wrong to do that. Things are understood and accepted. And so this is a difference in culture. Status is more important. In many places where I've worked in Asia, a person is introduced to you as Attorney Gomez or Engineer Velasco. And status comes from the title that they have. They're just not introduced as Tom and Bill or Joel. So status determines not achievement. And they're not crisis-oriented like we are. Now, again, these are generalities. There will be some differences, obviously, in certain people, but they're not crisis-oriented as much because life has so often been a crisis, and they may not have had the money to be able to prepare for the crisis. And so they just kind of go with the flow. They work with it. So I want to move on to three particular areas, and then I'm going to have Joel come back and illustrate some attitudes and decisions that he made that made a difference as he worked in these settings. Three things. We're going to talk about individualism versus group. Secondly, we're going to talk about equality versus hierarchy. And third, we're going to talk about high and low context. Those are three areas where the West very much is different from those who are immigrating or coming into our culture, into our neighborhood, into our communities. Did you know that America, the United States, is the #1 culture in the world when it comes to individualism? We are raised and trained to be our own person. We are admired for getting it done ourselves. The interest of the individual prevails over the interest of the group. It even affects how we present salvation in your church. Accept Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior. I want me time. I want to take a personal retreat. In many of the cultures of the world, that doesn't even equate. It's not there. Individualism is where we are, but many of the societies that come into our world, from Africa, from the Hispanic world, from Asia, it is much more based on group, how the group feels. People are integrated into strong and cohesive in-groups, and their life is protected in exchange for unquestioned loyalty. I'll never forget one of the times I took my staff out in the Philippines and we wanted to order pizza. There's 14 of us at the table. And so I said to the group, what kind of pizza would you like to have? 20 minutes later, we had not had a decision yet because everybody wanted to be in harmony with what others were thinking they might want. And finally, somebody said, well, why don't, and then everybody started talking. And finally, 20 minutes later, on the inside, I was pulling my hair out. Let's just get it done. But the importance of harmony in the group made that very, very difficult to group. And so in cultures such as Hispanic cultures or even an Indian culture, a Filipino culture, the in-group and out-group is a central part of this group mentality, this cultural collectivism. And as an outsider, it's tough to break in, but you can do it. So this is an interesting thing that I've observed, and a Filipino leader taught me this. He said, you know, it seems that in the West, in order to become a part of a church, you have to believe, then you behave, and then you can belong. But he said, in our church, the way we approach it is this: we want you to belong. If you belong, then over time, you will believe. And then Jesus will do something in your life and you will behave. This is an expression of the importance that group has, even in the journey of faith of those who come to know him and want to come to know him from other settings. Let's go on to the next slide. The second area is equality. The big word is egalitarianism. Many Americans, we believe that all men are created equal. Okay, the American dream. Our social status is not fixed. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. But in many countries of the world, there is not equality. Hierarchy is the norm. Power is distributed unevenly, and it's accepted as normal in Indonesia, in India, in the Philippines. Normal that this person was born into this family, and therefore he gets certain privileges that I will never have. Mm-hmm. He is welcome in certain places I can never go. So the way to get around this hierarchy is you look for sponsors, and you look for benefactors, somebody that can help you get into the place where you'd like to be. Otherwise, you'll not get there. The lid is in place. So how does that relate to us in America? As pastors, we are often looked at as somebody that can be a bridge into a new relationship, new responsibilities, new community. So it's important then that we understand that we can be a sponsor that can welcome them into this new society in a wonderful way. Third area real quick, and then I want to get to Joel in a couple of questions. This is where communication, go back to the past slide there. This is where misunderstanding happens. It's in the area of context. America is low context, which simply means this. If we're going to learn something, you got to tell me. You got to express it in words. I have 2 MK kids, and my communication style is more Asian than it is American. Finally, one day, my son Tim said to me this. He said, "Dad, just spell it out. What do you really mean? Don't talk to me like you're an Asian anymore." Words communicate in this way. But most people that come into our country from other places, from Asia, from the Hispanic world, and from Africa, they are high context, and words are only a small part of what they're communicating. So we have to look at body language. We have to look at tone of voice. We have to look at eye movement, even certain words, the way that they're communicated. Now, interestingly, high context avoids confrontation because it saves face. I can say to you, yes, I don't really mean yes, but my nonverbals are saying to you, please understand, I can't do it, but I don't want to say no to you. So the yes does not always mean yes, and it's so easily misunderstood. The tip is simply this: understand the whole context. In my setting, it would often be when somebody would say, I will try to be there. What they're saying is, I can't make it. Okay. If they say maybe, what it means in their context is, I'm not going. And they expect me to understand that. So we can easily miss the communication. And this is a learned skill. We can do this, and it will help us to be able to bridge the gap between those that are from another culture and our own. So observe body language, observe word choice, recognize that yes doesn't mean yes, and don't be upset when something that you thought was going to happen didn't. Ask the next question: what did I miss? Now, Pastor Joel, in your setting, with these sort of cultural dynamics going on, as a pastor, what are attitudes that you decided to have, or decisions that you made that cultivated the ability for you to make connections in a world that was really different than your own?
That's a great, I love how you phrase the question, attitudes and decisions, because you need both, right? When you are pastoring interculturally, it requires a lot of attitude work internally, but culture in a community, culture in our local churches don't change based on attitude. Cultures are shaped by decisions and behavior. It's like, you can't change culture by thinking alone. It's what you do. It's what you say. It's how you act that shapes culture. So I think that's great, attitudes and decisions. So if you're writing down notes through Bill's talk, I'd just encourage you to write down, like, I'm going to talk 2 attitudes and a couple decisions. So, and both attitudes deal with love, but we don't often attach like this descriptor to love. So first one would be love that's curious. To be an effective multicultural pastor, staff member, you've got to be curious, much like we would with our spouse. If you love your husband, you love your wife, you're going to say, wait a minute, help me understand why you just did that. And it's because we love them. And I remember it was probably 3 years ago in a meeting with our Spanish leadership. We have a Spanish congregation. So I'm the lone English speaker. I'm the lone American white person in the room. I'm the only one who doesn't speak Spanish. So the whole meeting's in Spanish, unless they fill me in on what's going on. So I'm just there to shape culture and listen and encourage. And I am dying of thirst, Bill. I'm like, I need a bottle of water. So I ask I stop. I am the white lead pastor. I'm the pastor principal. Like, I'm the lead pastor of the whole thing. And I'm there and I say, hey guys, I'm thirsty. I'm going to go get a bottle of water. Can I bring you guys a bottle of water? Who wants a bottle of water? So we have men and women in the room, probably 10 of them. Anyone want a bottle of water? And no one, not a single person raised their hand. No one wanted water. So I get up, I leave the meeting, go to the office, get one bottle of water for me, and come back and sit down. And without a word, there was not an English sentence. There wasn't a Spanish sentence. He is a Honduran. One Honduran looked around the room. There were subtle nods and gestures. He stood up, left, and came back with an armful of water and handed it out to everybody. So here's where love and curiosity come. I stopped the whole meeting, and with Pastor Odulio, my Nicaraguan pastor, said, help, what just happened? I wanted to give you water. You told me no. And then without a word, you expressed that you wanted water and someone else got it. And it was a great learning experience. So you're talking, I think you used the words cultural prisons, or there are a million ways where I've learned to be more Jesus-like through my Latino brothers and sisters. Here's one where I was challenging them because it was a conflict of status and hierarchy, where the white pastor would not be allowed to serve those beneath. And that's not how Jesus teaches us to lead. So it was a good conversation. Like, for me to be a good leader, I must learn to serve. And for you to be good brothers and sisters with me, you must allow me to serve you. And that flips their culture upside down. And, but it's curiosity that allows that. You've got to stop and ask, help me understand why this happened. And often it'll be because of our culture, their culture, just we're passing each other in the night and we don't even know it. So love with curiosity, you ask the questions and you learn, and you just have this beautiful, curious love. I want to understand. 2, it's love with flexibility, where we're bending to each other. So I just gave a story about, I'm wanting my Latino brothers to bend toward me. Let me serve you. And often I find it's me learning to bend toward them. That's what I'm doing much more often. You mentioned the high context, low context communication, that we bend there all the time. I want people to let their yes be yes and no, no, right? I'll quote the Bible to prove my American low context conversations. We've got a wonderful volunteer who is one of our main camera operators. And he will occasionally send a text message to our executive pastor, and it'll go something like this: Pastor Chris, I'm not sure I'll be able to make it this Sunday. Now, if a white person sends that to us, the response is, what's going on? Anything I can do to help you? Are you sure? Can I help you rearrange something? But with our Indian brothers and sisters, that means I'm not coming. He's probably like out of the country. Like, there's no possible way for him to come, but he's not going to tell his authority he can't. He's asking for permission. And so this is an example where I don't feel we should ask them to bend to us. We don't need to lecture them about, hey, here's how we want you to talk. It's really about us bending to them. Like, I understand, John, bless you. We'll see you next week. And we can learn to bend to their forms of communication. Because to me, that's not a Jesus culture issue. That's a language issue, and we can bend and flex. So love that's curious, love that's flexible. Those are 2 really important attitude. I just had one yesterday. I'm doing a home blessing for an Indian family. And I asked them, so what time does it start? And they said 11:30. And they said it very tentatively. And I said, I know what you mean. I will be there at 11:30, but if we don't start till 12:30 or 1, I'm okay. I said, I will be fine. So because they were already nervous, but we've been around each other long enough. They knew, I knew, and we just get right to it. So flexibility. But let me give you 2 decisions that I think are really important for pastors. One, here's a decision. You go into their homes. You cannot, and so this is part of the hierarchy. You cannot delegate this to other staff members. If you are the point pastor, they will invite you, and you have to be the one. Unless you are completely unavailable, you've got to go into their home for food fellowships, family events, home blessings. When Bill talks about the in-group and out-group, I'm an outsider, but they will start with the lead authority and the lead pastor that they hold in such high regard. If they bring a cross-culture person into their home, they're going to start with their pastor. And if that's you, don't delegate it, don't minimize it. Clear your calendar, because it's going to take not an hour, not 2, but probably 3 to 4. And I thought that video was great. Don't clear your plate, because they'll keep bringing you food. Whether you like it or not, they'll give you more and more and more and more. Go to their home. They value hospitality so much more than I do. Whereas me, it's nice to have people over. For them, it's an event. It's a monumental occasion. And if you do it with one family, that will spread through the whole community. Like, that person came to my home, and that whole community feels welcomed and loved by you. Like, you did it for one, you would do it for them all. 2, so be in their home. But 2, I think this is critical. The second decision, go to their home. But second, prioritize diversity so much that you ask the hard question through every layer of your church. Does our staff reflect our congregation? Does our platform reflect it? Does our deacon team reflect it? Does our hospitality, our greeters? And then, probably easily forgotten, does our events? Do all of our events look like a Midwestern white potluck? Or are we cognizant of those other cultures around us? One of my first big failures here is we had a massive church meal, and it was fantastic. I mean, it was packed, it was fun, everyone was happy, and we had the best hog roast, like, of all time. Except, guess what? A large percentage of our Indian population, they don't eat pork. And I didn't even see it. I didn't even anticipate it. And it was an African-American person, which is telling to me that another minority group noticed, who wasn't eating anything but salad, and who brought it to my attention. And that was the last time we ever did that. From that point on, every major food event, we would be very cognizant of diet preference. And in fact, what's so fun is when you start inviting them to cook, and you invite, hey, this is going to be an Indian food meal for our church, or this will be Africans preparing food. So ask the tough diversity question all the way through. Pastor Julie, one of our kids' pastors, came up to me just a week ago with a Post-it note showing me the names of all of our JBQ coaches. Here's all of the names of our coaches. There was only one name that I could pronounce easily. The rest of them were Africans and Indians. I'm like, man, the more complicated the names on that postcard or Post-it note, the better we're doing. I thought it was beautiful. So love curiously, be flexible, and then ask the diverse questions all the way through, and don't delegate going into homes. You've got to do that, and it'll make a huge difference.
Yeah, the typical American pastor has never been asked to give a house blessing.
Oh,
and so, but that is hugely important in another cultural setting. And there's
a month ago, an Indian showed me the pictures of his new home on his phone. Hey, pastor, here's my phone. Looked at the pictures, and we didn't even pause. They just said, so when is the home blessing? I'll get it on my calendar. And that's where I'm going Saturday. So it starts at 11:30 or 12 or 12:30 or 1.
And Joel, what he was doing by showing you the picture was hinting for you to say what you responded to. It was a hint. It wasn't a, would you come and do this for me?
No.
Because there's the potential that you might say, I'm busy, I can't. And he didn't want you or he to be embarrassed.
It's taken, I've been here 9 years. So my first couple of years, it took a while. And there would be a lead cross-cultural Indian that would help me understand. Pastor, they're asking you to come.
Okay.
Now I just know.
Follow-up question, things that are important that you've seen that have built bridges for you into this community or into these different communities.
Oh,
what
man.
Are the bridges?
All right. So how do you build bridges? Let me I've got a few things I've got jotted down. Number one, write down these 3 words: food, food, food. Ask them to cook food for you. Ask them to host meals for you. Ask them to decorate at food events. And here's a caveat or a warning. This is another big mistake I've made. Pay them for their food in advance. Like in American culture, we'd say, go buy it, turn in your receipts, we'll pay you back. If they buy it, they'll never turn in a receipt. They would never obligate you to return that favor. Pay them in advance. So non-American cultures give them a prepaid gift card. We want you to cook for us, and the church has already given you money. Now, they may not use it, but you won't lose face by not paying for the food, but they won't give you the receipt back. So solve the problem in advance. For my American brothers and sisters, they never fail to send the receipt to me. Non-Western cultures won't give me one. Even if they feel they should be reimbursed, they won't risk that conversation. So food. 2, this is so easy, pastors. Pray for issues or pray for needs that are impacting their homeland. Like in North India right now, the kind of like this neo-nationalism is happening, and Hindu powerful people are mistreating Christians throughout, especially northern India. Pray for that if you have Indians. If there's a disaster, we had a major train accident in India a couple months ago. We mentioned that in prayer. When there was crisis in Nigeria, we mentioned that in prayer. So think broader than American, Illinois, local community issues. If you have Mexicans in your church or in your community, thank God for at a moment of national holiday or pride, mention it, just a sentence. We want to give thanks for what God has done in that nation. So pray or mention their needs publicly. Number 3, if you're in a church that isn't multicultural, but there are immigrants in your community, I would suggest start with the local high school or elementary schools. And because, when an immigrant moves into your town, they've got to be integrated into the public schools quickly, rapidly. So they'll get the 4th grade, kid from Ecuador that came here with 1 pair of clothes and no school supplies. And the school will scramble to get everything they need for that family to get them started on an educational path. Often the schools are the first community organization that's really activated. If a church can form a bridge to the school and say, hey, when you have a family that's immigrated here, we would like to help. And the school will probably be very grateful. And you will be, one of the first responders to meet the needs of an immigrant community. And that may be the gospel bridge that can help your church begin to welcome someone from a different culture. So food, pray for their needs, use the schools. I've got some ideas I jotted, like purchase Walmart gift cards to have on hand that you can give to the school from your church to that family, bus passes, clothing, stuff like that. That could lead to establishing English as second language classes. Bill mentioned being the bridge builder, being a cross-cultural mentor. Let me help you figure out how to go to the DMV. Let me walk you through what it is to set up a bank account, all kinds of things that they need help navigating. And then I think fourth, and this one's hard for me, but I think it's important for white pastors that are, working on a building multicultural churches. Be comfortable being less efficient in order to be more effective in their culture. And let me give an example. Like, I don't have my phone here, but like you can sign up for any event at our church on our app. All you got to do, download our app, sign up for the event. And my experience has been people native to our culture get that, like they're okay not having a personal handshake and a personal invitation to come. They'll put their information in their phone, sign up, and show up. People from other cultures are much slower to do that. And the lag time between them accepting that process from, start where they start now to doing that is so slow. It's, you almost have to say, I know what the normal church system is. If you want to be a volunteer, here's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Throw that out the window for immigrant communities. You have to slowly do it one-on-one. And you have to, especially if you're the lead pastor, you have to ask them. I would love it if you would serve as an usher. Would you allow me to help you learn how to be an usher? And you walk them through the process. Let me introduce you to our lead usher. And you forget the forms, forget the past. Now you still have to do all the background stuff, but that comes much later. You have to throw out efficiency and walk them through person by person. And if you get the lead influencing woman or the lead influencing man, the rest will follow quickly. And you just need to get a few people that then they will be the ones to walk the rest of their community into the life of the church. So find that one key family, that one key husband, that one social influencer in that group of Ecuadorians or Filipinos, and get that one or two in, and the floodgates will open. You'll see them come through. So there's some thoughts, Bill.
Good. That's very good. Stone Creek Church in Urbana, there is a significant African-American woman from a nation in Africa that has been the conduit for dozens, if not 100 people to come to that church through her position of influence at the U of I. She's related to them, she's loved them, she's invited them, and people have come. So finding that influential person, and it starts, I thought it was a great idea, start with schools, start with the interpersonal relationships that you have. Kids are the greatest bridge builders sometimes for us. So if you have kids at home, that's a wonderful thing. Let me go on to just a couple of things that I wanted to write down as far as ways to build bridges and to up your IQ. There are some attitudes, and some of these Joel's have mentioned, so we're going to overlap each other a little bit, but that's okay. It's not bad to hear the same thing twice. Number one is active listening. Active listening. Don't be distracted. Keep your eyes on the person that's talking to you. Even if it seems like it goes on and on, they get body language, and we don't get it quite as well. So the one is active listening. It's going to have to be a miracle for you to see it, it looks like. The second thing is an openness and being curious. The willingness to move outside your own comfort zone. to try something different, to try something new. Oftentimes that's in the way of food. The third is having a warm and welcoming posture. The importance of our nonverbal communication is it cannot be overstated. They read us before they speak to us. And then I think a fourth thing is having respect, the willingness to accept a person, no matter what it is that they may have walked in wearing. It may look a lot different than what you normally wear, but they're there. And they feel that, you know, that respect is something that you can offer them, and then relationship can be built from that. Let me write down, let me just mention a couple of things about how we build bridges. Immigrants maintain a tight social network. Let me touch what's on the screen first. Read a book by a foreign author. Okay, example, The Kite Runner, talking about Afghanis. Cry the Beloved Country, talking about those from South Africa. You learn insights into where they came from. Second, watch a foreign produced series or story on Netflix. My wife and I have gotten into Korean drama, The Extraordinary Attorney Woo. And it's voice dubbed into English. Most of them are not, but it's interesting to look at a culture and see the differences and ask the question, I wonder why they did that or this. It awakens us to those that are around us. Share a meal with someone from another culture, only it's their food. Begin learning a new language, Duolingo or Babbel. For so long it goes, it's free. And any attempt at learning another language will be welcomed and accepted by those that come to our country. Accept invitations, attend cultural celebrations. If you're invited to a wedding, be there, but plan on it being half a day long. Observe how people communicate. Part of learning culture is observation. Ask questions when you don't understand. I would encourage you to go to an Asian food store and really shop and see what's there. And with the attendants there, ask a question. How do you make this? Or what is this? Another wonderful thing to do as you develop along the lines of improving your culture as you're working with other people, study scripture with people from another country and listen to what they see. For example, read the prodigal son story. And then rather than giving the example of what's going on, ask the person from Honduras or ask the person from somewhere in Africa, what do you see happening here? What's impressed you about this? So that's going to improve. Those things can help us to be more culturally aware in our own attitudes. Let's go on to the next slide. Immigrants maintain a tight social network, and we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. So look for opportunities to enter their world. As Pastor Joel said, food and home gatherings are an entry point. Love their food. We had a team once that came to a nation in Asia, and the person was so concerned about the health of the team that said, we're only going to eat Western food, and most of the time we're just going to eat at McDonald's. And frankly, their trip was a bust because they did not take time to relate and be in the homes of those that were so appreciative of them being there. Love their food. Children's activities are an opportunity for meeting. Pay attention and learn about facial expressions. Always try to the best of your ability to smile and be welcoming in your body posture. Be flexible with time. We've talked about that. Be respectful with older family members. If you happen to be invited into a home and there's a father or mother or grandfather or grandmother there, don't overlook them. Pay particular attention to them. Greet them, listen to them. The fact that you are showing respect to elders will mean the world to the family that you visited, because it is a culture that respects elders in ways that America has forgotten. Many cultures prefer to communicate without words, so be aware that the yes doesn't always mean yes. And accept invitations and offer opportunities for doing something together. One more slide, and then we're going to open it up for some Q&A. Okay? In communicating, collective or group cultures relate more to stories and examples rather than the 5 key points or 5 ways that you can win the day. Okay. So a friend of mine from Singapore was invited to China to speak to house church leaders on the subject of leadership. And I asked him, I said, what are you going to teach on? And he looked at me kind of like dumbfounded, like, wouldn't you know? I'm going to speak on David's mighty men. It wasn't John Maxwell or any other pop leader teacher that we might gravitate toward. He knew that in their context, biblical and story would enable communication to happen more clearly. Offer ministry, as Joel has mentioned, offer ministry that helps new families adapt to their new world, an English class or a culture class on adapting to America. I don't see many churches doing that. And why couldn't we, especially if we have the resource to be able to help them? Pray that God will give you a culture advisor. You know, the success that Kim and I had in many Asian settings was because we had someone that we could go to and say, hey, this happened. What does it mean? And then really listen. And finally, I think ask God to give you a love for the people that he is bringing into your life. They are really able to tell when that is the case. A couple books that I might recommend. These are by an author named Richards and O'Brien called Misreading Scripture with Western Eyes. Last time I checked, it was $3.99 on Kindle. It's a great read. It's going to stretch you in the way that you interpret Scripture. And then the Livermore quote came from a book called Cultural Intelligence. It's for those of you that might want to go deeper and look at that in that way. Joel, give us one example from your setting of where this sort of cultural awareness and willingness to bend made a difference for a family.
Yeah, that's a great question. So first, I'm uniquely blessed. We've got a Latino congregation, and my friend Pastor Odulio on our team does such a phenomenal job. So I interact with some Latinos, but most of the miracle stories of seeing, I think I've said Ecuadorian because they're on my mind. We've had some Ecuadorian immigrants recently. This last Sunday, we met 2 Cubans, which is interesting because in a week I'll be in Cuba. So, but most of the miracle stories from our Hispanic culture, Odulia would speak to better. But for me, the one story, and I brought, I moved it from my bookshelf to my desk for this moment. These are my Hindu charms. They represent Hindu gods. And these used to belong to Kartik and Jennifer, and they gave them to me at their baptism. And so this to me, it captures why we bend and why we present the gospel and live the gospel cross-culturally. We've seen 2 Hindu men, both of them men of influence. One of them was one of the lead fundraisers for the Hindu temple when it was purchased and remodeled here in our town. So watching the process of these men, first, I'll just say it this way. I think earlier, Bill, you had a slide about we belong first, and then we believe, and then we behave from a more Eastern mindset. And that's certainly the case of these families who had Christian friends, even though they were Hindu. And they would come to they would engage in the community. And then they became friends with some of the Christians that attend our church, and then they would attend. And so they went from Hindu to Hindu plus Jesus. And both Kartik and Kanan, these 2 Hindu men that have gotten saved, renounced Hinduism and declared their faith in Jesus, both of them, after probably, I'll say 2 years of belonging, being in our church, learning our songs, learning our culture, allowing me to be their family's pastor while they were still Hindu. I mean, we prayed for things together while they were still Hindu. But each of them, both Kartik and Kanan, came to a pivot prayer moment. For Kartik, it was a physical he needed healing. For Cannon, it was an immigration issue that threatened his family having to move back to India, and it looked like it was impossible for his family to stay. And Jesus answered both of their prayers miraculously and quickly. And that miracle is what prompted their baptism, that they swore allegiance to Jesus and stopped considering themselves Hindu, that had Jesus on the side to, I'm now a Christian. And so I think the willingness to keep learning how to engage with other cultures pays dividends for the gospel that can't be overstated. And then privately, just in my own life, I enjoy watching my scores change, because my brothers and sisters, I took this with you, Bill, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And to see my task and person orientation shift to the middle, I'm very much high task, but being around my Hispanic brothers and sisters has taught me to really slow down and laugh, to enjoy food longer, and to not be in a hurry, to trust Jesus to get it. Jesus will help get everything done. I can be in the moment. And I didn't grow up learning to live in the moment with people, and my life is richer. So the gospel's advancement is beautiful. And then I think I'm going to have more fun in heaven. I'm more ready for heaven because of my rubbing shoulders that has shaved some poor, my own cultural prisons, rubbing with them. It's been beautiful. I hope I'm capturing that. I did not end with such succinct language there, but
No,
catch what I'm saying.
You know, it is an amazing journey that we can be on as we open ourselves to the possibility of relating with people who come from other places and being a part of their lives and letting them see that we're genuine, that we really care. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be speaking on the Good Samaritan, the story of the Good Samaritan, and the question in who is your neighbor? Well, the Samaritan was from another religion and from another part of the country, and he was not, he was not the one that was going to be helping this person who was basically an enemy. So if we flip it the other way, basically, there is the opportunity for us to be the Good Samaritan to people who are at points of need as they've come into our world. And as God gives you that connection, hopefully some of these things will help you to take the first step, or maybe it's the 15th step. Some of you I'm talking to, you're veterans at this. And hopefully there was a few insights and maybe a couple of reminders that said, this is going to help me or make it work more. But I thank you for going on this journey. If there are 1 million or more immigrants that live in America, or that live in Illinois alone, what a field of opportunity for us as his salt and light. Actually, we're doing pretty good on time, Joel. You've been excellent. We've got 5 minutes, or if we want to take longer, that's fine. But just like to open it up. If there's a question or a follow-up that you'd like to ask, we've got time to handle a couple of questions. And then we will have this recorded and we'll make it available on online later so that you can look at it again. Or if you want, you can send me an email and ask for the PowerPoint. I'll send it to you. Nothing is new under the sun, and these ideas are not new either. So I'd be happy to say that. My email, wtsnider1@gmail.com. You can find it in the district directory. But at this moment, any questions or comments?
I had just a question. Something that's occurred in our small rural town is that we have 4 foreign exchange students, and we've had one few years back, whatever. We have 4. Would it be a gesture to connect cross culturally to have for those the families that are hosting them, and for those students themselves, to just invite them for a dinner, just to have a dinner, maybe a Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. Something, is that welcoming, or is that alienating? You're different. I'm inviting you because you're different.
Pastor Joel, you want to comment?
Well, thank you for kicking that right to me. I appreciate that.
No.
So I have found you're asking a great question. And I think my experience has been, if you ask questions like that sincerely to people, they know your heart. And if you know them, or they are aware, you could just ask them. I have in my heart, I think Thanksgiving is a great time. I have it in my heart to invite all of you to our home for Thanksgiving. I would love to experience that with you. You see a little bit of our culture. I would love to learn your culture. Would that be okay with you? And you defer to them. I would not create a plan and then say, here's my plan. Here's my 4 goals here. Do you want to do that? Keep it all relational. This is what's in my heart to do. How would that feel to you? Would you be open to that? And give them permission to say yes or no. But I think Thanksgiving is a perfect time to invite them into your home. I don't know what culture these students are, but if there's a celebration in their culture, they could reciprocate that to you and invite you in for something that's a cultural equivalent to an American Thanksgiving.
How's that, Eric? What backgrounds do they come from? Do you know?
Europe, one from North Africa, 2 from Spain, I think 1 from Ukraine. There was some godly families, which is awesome. Ones that I know, but just thinking of that as an idea, Joel, thank you for saying don't have a big plan, because that's my task default,
100.
And I would say this, it may be that since they're staying in an American home already, Thanksgiving may be already mapped out, but another day, like a Saturday or something, we just wanted to get everybody together and would love it if you'd be interested in coming to our home. We're just providing the food. It'd be great interaction. And we're so thankful you're in our community. So you might be flexible.
Let me circle back to the don't have a plan. So Eric, I would say that, like, we're doing this for Thanksgiving. We have a lot of Nigerian students at ISU that we have connected with in our church. And so I have a plan. It's in my head. Our staff has a plan. We've talked about what would it look like to do this. We'll have these kind of host homes, but I'm not presenting to the students a plan. I'm presenting them an invitation. How would you feel if we had host homes for you at Thanksgiving? And it keeps it very simple and relational. All I'm looking for is a yes. So I think Americans tend to ask, well, what day, what time, and how long would the commitment be? They're not thinking that yet. It's just, I would love to come over, and the 411, all the info will be worked out in the wash. I mean, so I'm still very much task oriented. Our team is still acting like a bunch of Americans, but the invitation process is much more personal and less informational. Does that make sense? So I don't know if I'm able not to have a plan, but I can communicate in a way that is less American and more Eastern. Yeah. Or in your case, I mean, you've got multiple cultures, but probably all of those would be less detail oriented than maybe we would be.
And the key word is flexibility, but a good heart effort, I think that's valuable. Someone else, question or comment, please.
Sure. Well, we got a large Hispanic community in our area, and we've been working on trying to reach out to them. And we have one lady that's from Mexico, and she's starting to come to our church, which is awesome. She just got baptized this last Sunday, which is even more awesome. Praise God. She doesn't have her own vehicle. So we've been having to pick her up for church and have different ladies in our church pick her up to bring her. Point of frustration is, and I think it's the cultural thing that comes up, is we'll ask her, are you wanting to come to church this Sunday? And of course she will say yes. Then maybe an hour before getting picked up, or when someone goes to pick her up, she's not available to come. Either something happens or whatever. I'm at a loss for how to deal with that situation and how to help people to understand if there's a better way to do it or not. It's an awesome opportunity to help our Midwestern church to learn how to work with a different culture and how to understand a different culture, and how they see things differently. But in this particular situation, I'm kind of at a loss too, because I don't know how best to deal with this.
Okay. I saw your hand raised, Jose. Do you have something you'd like to? Yeah, you agree.
Yeah,
It's also happening in Chicago.
Being Latino, I can help you with that. Oftentimes when it comes to respect and eldership, there's a passive aggressiveness that's just pervasive throughout the culture. In other words, there's the desire is never to offend. I would say that her intent is wanting to come, and she really does want to come. But the majority of Latinos are event orientation, or event oriented, where the thing that's happening right now is the most important thing in the room. So I think one of the ways to approach it that would be honoring to the both of you is saying, hey, we really want to be a part of your life, and we'll make ourselves available, but we need you to reach out. So that way the responsibility is on her, but she also needs to understand that she's not becoming a burden, because part of it can be embarrassment, where now I'm not able to get there. I don't want to be a burden, but I don't want to say no, because it's disrespectful to say no. As her elder, especially as a pastor, you're highly esteemed in her eyes. So she's not going to say no, but it's allowing her, or providing her the understanding that it is okay to say that she's not able to, and then lead with that, saying, hey, we would love to come get you. Will you be able to attend? Will you be ready? And offering her the option of saying no, that it's okay not to say yes, if that makes sense. Hey, Jaime, I also would like for you to chime in on this, because I mean, this is your everyday life.
God bless you guys. My name is not Southwest Campus. I got on through the church Zoom, but my name is Jamie. My wife Camille is working behind me. I will say this, for my wife and I, we're Puerto Rican Americans. We're Puerto Rican, but we were raised in an American culture. And Bill, you spoke about that because we're raised in that American culture, we are often task driven and schedule driven, and we have a plan. We pastor our Spanish service, which is predominantly Mexican. And I wanted to say this, it's kind of something that you alluded to earlier that I kind of want to make everyone aware of, that even within the Latino culture, there are big barriers. Our style of speaking as a Puerto Rican is very different than Mexican, even Colombian. Early on in our ministry, my wife mentioned to me, she said, hey, you kind of lost yourself in Spanish. And it's because I was speaking completely in the dialect and in the tongue of a Mexican. I had completely adapted their verbiage, if you will. And then Bill, you talked about leaning towards one another. I learned that at one point I almost had to, I don't want to say rebuke, but approach them and say, when do you guys lean towards me? Because as a Puerto Rican, I've had to learn how to speak like a Mexican, like a Colombian, like a Dominican, like a Peruvian, but nobody's learning that I say words a certain way. And I want to be comfortable in speaking the way I speak Spanish as a Puerto Rican, and not always leaning towards you guys. So, for Pastor Brian, speaking to this woman, and she's a Mexican, even that conversational, that the speaking to her, there's a loss of communication. But my overall point is to encourage you that even within ourselves, sometimes there's a loss of communication. As a Puerto Rican, we're very clear, very almost sometimes very blunt, Pastor Jose. We say what we mean and we mean what we say. And that's not a bad thing, but sometimes that lack of communication creates gaps and creates boundaries. So I've even understood that, where I'll just say, hey, I can't make it, don't pick me up. They'll say yes, but they really mean no, but they don't want to tell you no because they don't want to disrespect your authority. So I don't know if that helps. I just kind of wanted to speak into the leaning of what you spoke earlier, Bill. But I think the overall thing is just kind of sitting down and say, hey, let's be clear, because we're going to make the effort to come get you. There is quite a right, and explain to her the amount of time and effort that we're going to put in. So we just want to make sure that whoever's coming to get you is feeling honored by putting in the work to pick you up, so that you honor them by being prepared. And if your yes is yes, and if not, then tell us no, that's okay. We're not offended.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah, that's
I think what we're saying is this is a challenging, exciting, sometimes encouraging, sometimes discouraging, but it's learning.
Mm-hmm.
It is learning. So that's why I use the word upping your cultural life. We're never going to get there. Lingenfelter uses this term that God would desire that we become 150% people. We will never be completely of another culture, but we can grow into and understand some of the dynamics of their world so that our world becomes more enriched, and we're a bigger person than we were before if we go down that road. Quick question is here. Is it ever positive to ask our cultural friends when they plan on arriving at the event, such as a wedding or etc.? And Steve, I will honestly, if you have a culture friend who, it's more than just, hi, how are you? You can ask them and say, let me ask you a question. When do you think it will realistically begin? And he or she will smile, a knowing smile, and say, maybe 45 minutes later than the start time. So if you arrive 30 minutes behind, it's okay, Pastor. I think that's about the closest thing you're going to get to as far as when it will actually start.
Yeah, I think that's great, because when it starts is when the important people are there. So no one can give you a definite time. But like I've learned, if I'm going to do, I don't know if we have, the hardest ones for me have been African time is the one for weddings and events, they're the furthest off schedule. So if I'm doing an African wedding, I may bring work to do. Like I'll be there on time, but I'm going to have work. I'm going to do work. I'm working on my sermon while I'm waiting for the bride to come an hour and a half late. And it's not offensive to them. I cannot not be on time. But I want to kick back to Brian. I just have an idea. Take it or leave it. But if I had one, and first of all, you're asking the right question. Like you're always evaluating. This is an event that we can start a half an hour late for this person, and it's no big deal. This is Sunday service. We can't ask our volunteers to wait. And I think the brothers did a great job talking about navigating that conversation. But if I had one Latino attending, and it was the Lord's desire for our church to embrace that community more actively, one idea that just I would consider, look for a good time to do like I'll use my terminology. We're going to do Taco Sunday, free tacos for everyone after church. And these are not going to be Taco Bell tacos. They're not even going to be the Mexican diner down the street that just kind of flops it on your plate. We want good street tacos. And so you would ask this lady, are there people in your circle that could make tacos that would knock my socks off? Like that would be so, and we will buy all of the food, we'll pay, whatever, 100 in advance. You get your food, you prepare it your way. And could we have a big church where we're going to raise money for whatever? And so you'll have a whole bunch of people that are not yet connected to the church that have a good experience, and you celebrate their food. If your people are like all of my people that enjoy really good Mexican food, we do 2 taco Sundays a year, and it's like the best Sunday of the our church applauds when we announce Taco Sunday is now 3 weeks away. And you can leverage food to get a broader invite event where they're actually serving and they're proud of their food, and we get to enjoy it, and it's a win-win.
Good thought. Okay. If you're still there, you want another question, we'll take one more. Otherwise, we can close it up. All right. Well, thank you, Zach, for your help, and thank you for recording this. We want to make it available to others. The world is coming to us. And what better place for people to find the beauty of Jesus than through relationships that are developed across culturally. So thank you for your openness to being a part of this, and pray with us that hopefully dozens more will watch this and will pick up some help that could help them in their own communities, because their communities are becoming more and more multicultural. Joel, thank you for the great illustrations and insight, and for your heart for a growingly diverse world. Appreciate you. All right, let me pray, then we're done. Lord, thank you for this moment. Thank you for the day that we've been able to share this hour together. Thank you for the learning, the questions, the things that have happened, the ideas that I believe your Holy Spirit has even sparked in us that will help us to reach new people in new ways. And so, Lord, we commit this to you. Pray that many more will watch it. And I pray, Father, that our district will be known as a genuine, full of churches that are diverse and multicultural and reaching people in such unique and wonderful ways. And you do a mighty, mighty work. Lord, when we say give us Illinois, what we really mean is all of Illinois.
Yes.
All of it, Lord. Those that are venturing into our state to try to find work or education, oh God, or who are fleeing from bad situations. Lord, may it happen that your church grows in this way. And thank you, Father, for each one here. I pray your blessing upon them. Good health, strength, and a great weekend, Father, and open doors for them into new communities. In Jesus' name.